You know what's funny? I was at a coffee shop last week, and I overheard two people talking. One of them was clearly learning English, and she kept stopping mid-sentence to think about grammar rules. You could see it on her face, right? That moment where she'd pause and her eyes would look up like she was searching through a mental filing cabinet for the past perfect tense or something. And I thought, wow, we've really been taught to learn languages the hard way, haven't we? So here's the thing. If you're trying to learn English or improve your English, I want you to forget almost everything you learned in a traditional classroom. I know that sounds crazy. I know you probably spent years conjugating verbs and memorizing vocabulary lists. But the truth is, that's not how we actually learn to communicate. That's not how babies learn their first language, and it's definitely not how you're going to sound natural and confident when you speak. Today, I want to share something with you that changed everything for me when I was teaching English. I used to be one of those teachers, the ones with the grammar worksheets and the vocabulary quizzes. And my students would do great on tests, but then they'd freeze up when someone actually tried to have a conversation with them. It was heartbreaking, honestly. They knew the rules, but they couldn't speak. So I started looking into how we really acquire language, not just learn it. And there's a huge difference between those two things. Learning is what you do in school. Acquiring is what happens when you absorb a language naturally, the way children do. And once I understood that difference, everything changed, not just for my students, but for how I thought about language altogether. Let me tell you about Maria. She was one of my students, super dedicated, always did her homework, knew every grammar rule in the book. But when we'd do speaking exercises, she'd stumble and hesitate and apologize constantly. One day I asked her, Maria, when you speak Spanish, your first language, do you think about where to put the verb? And she looked at me like I was crazy. She said, no, of course not, I just speak. Exactly. That's exactly the point. The problem is, we're trying to think our way through English instead of feeling our way through it. We're treating it like a math problem instead of like music. And language is so much more like music than math. It's got rhythm, it's got flow, it's got patterns that you feel rather than calculate. When you listen to a native speaker, they're not thinking about grammar, they're just riding the wave of the language. So how do you get to that point? How do you stop being the person who pauses to think about grammar and become the person who just speaks? Well, it starts with changing how you practice. And I mean really changing it. Not just doing your practice differently, but completely rethinking what practice even means. First thing, and this is huge, you need to listen way more than you think you do. I'm talking hours and hours of listening. And not the kind of listening where you're straining to understand every single word. That's actually counterproductive. You want to listen the way you'd listen to music in the background while you're doing dishes. Relaxed. Easy. Just letting it wash over you. Your brain is incredibly smart. It's a pattern recognition machine. When you expose it to enough English, it starts to pick up on patterns automatically. You don't have to force it. You don't have to study it. You just have to give your brain enough input, enough examples, and it figures things out on its own. That's literally how you learned your first language. Nobody taught you grammar rules when you were 2 years old. You just heard people talking and your brain said, oh, okay, I see how this works. But here's where people mess up. They listen to things that are way too difficult. They put on CNN or they try to watch a movie without subtitles, and they understand maybe 20%, and then they feel frustrated and give up. Don't do that. You want to listen to things where you understand maybe 70, 80%, enough that you can follow along, but there's still new stuff in there for your brain to work on. And it needs to be interesting. This is so important. If you're bored, your brain checks out. It doesn't matter how good the material is for learning if you're falling asleep listening to it. So find stuff you actually care about, podcasts about your hobbies, YouTube channels about topics you love, audiobooks of stories that grab you. When you're interested, your brain pays attention. When your brain pays attention, you learn. I had another student, his name was Chen, and he was obsessed with basketball. Loved it. Watched every game. So I told him, stop doing grammar exercises, just watch basketball videos. In English, Game commentary, player interviews, analysis shows, all of it. He looked skeptical, but he did it. 3 months later, his English had improved more than it had in the previous year of traditional study. Why? Because he was engaged. He wanted to understand what they were saying. His brain was motivated. That's the secret, really. Motivation. Not the kind of motivation where you force yourself to study because you know you should. The kind of motivation where you're so interested in something that learning happens as a side effect. You're not trying to learn English, you're trying to understand what happens in the next episode of that show you're hooked on. You're trying to follow along with that podcast about true crime or cooking or whatever you're into. English just comes along for the ride. Now let's talk about speaking, because I know that's what most people really want to improve. They want to sound natural, sound fluent, sound confident. And here's what I see people doing wrong all the time. They practice speaking by having imaginary conversations in their head, or they talk to themselves in the mirror. And look, that's better than nothing, but it's not great. The problem with talking to yourself is there's no real communication happening. Communication isn't just about forming sentences. It's about conveying meaning, reading reactions, adjusting on the fly. You need another person for that. Even if that person is just listening to you and not responding, the fact that you're speaking to a real human changes everything. Your brain engages differently. But I get it, not everyone has an English-speaking friend they can practice with every day. So what do? Well, technology is amazing these days. There are language exchange apps where you can talk to people for free. There are online communities. There are even AI chatbots now that you can practice with, and honestly, some of them are pretty good for getting you comfortable just producing language without the fear of judgment. But here's something you can do right now, today, that doesn't require another person. Shadowing. Have you heard of this? It's incredible. You take an audio clip, something with clear speech, and you play it and repeat what you hear immediately after, like an echo. You're not memorizing it first. You're not reading along. You're just listening and repeating, trying to match the rhythm and the intonation as closely as you can. This does something magical. It trains your mouth to move the way it needs to move for English. It trains your brain to process and produce language at the same time. It builds that connection between hearing and speaking. And when you do it enough, you start to internalize those patterns. The rhythm of English starts to feel natural in your mouth. I know it feels weird at first. It feels silly, like you're a parrot or something, but push through that. Do it for 10 minutes a day for a month and tell me your speaking doesn't improve. It will. I've seen it happen over and over again. Another thing about speaking naturally, you have to stop trying to translate in your head. This is a trap so many learners fall into. Someone says something in English, and before you respond, you translate it to your language, think of a response in your language, then translate that back to English. By the time you're done, the conversation has moved on. You have to start thinking in English, and I know that sounds impossible, but it's not. It just takes practice. Start small. When you're doing everyday things, narrate them in English in your head. I'm making coffee. I'm putting on my shoes. I'm walking to the bus stop. Simple stuff. Present tense. Just describing what you see and do. As you get more comfortable, add more detail. I'm making coffee and it smells really good. I should probably clean this coffee maker. It's getting kind of gross. See? You're building the habit of processing your thoughts directly in English. No translation step. And the more you do this, the more automatic it becomes. Here's another thing that helps with sounding natural. You need to learn chunks, not just individual words. Native speakers don't build sentences word by word. We use these prefabricated chunks of language. Things like, I don't know, that's a good question, speaking of which, by the way, to be honest. These are little packages that we grab and use without thinking. When you learn vocabulary, learn phrases and collocations, not just single words. Don't just learn the word decide. Learn phrases like decide to do something, make a decision, come to a decision. Learn how words actually get used together in real English. This is what makes you sound natural instead of like you're using a dictionary. And pay attention to the little words, the ones that seem insignificant. Words like just actually, really, kind of, sort of, these are everywhere in casual English. They add nuance and softness to what we say. Like, compare I don't like that to I don't really like that, or I'm busy to I'm kind of busy. These little words change the feeling of what you're saying, make you sound less blunt, more natural. Now let's talk about mistakes, because this is where people really get in their own way. They're so afraid of making mistakes that they don't speak at all, or they speak so carefully and slowly that it doesn't even feel like a conversation. Listen to me. Mistakes are not your enemy. Mistakes are how you learn. Every single native speaker made thousands and thousands of mistakes when they were learning their first language. We all said stuff like I goed to the park or he don't like it when we were kids. And we got corrected naturally through exposure, through hearing the right way over and over until it stuck. You're going to make mistakes. That's fine. That's normal. That's part of the process. What matters is that you keep speaking. Keep trying. Keep putting yourself out there. Because every time you speak, even if you mess up, your brain is getting practice. It's building those neural pathways. It's getting more comfortable with the language. Sitting silently because you're afraid to make a mistake teaches your brain nothing. I want you to think about mistakes as experiments. You're testing out the language, seeing what works. Sometimes you'll get it wrong. Cool, now you know, adjust and try again. That's not failure, that's learning. The only real failure is not trying at all. And here's something else about mistakes. Native speakers make them too, all the time. We say stuff like I seen that movie or between you and I, and technically those are wrong, but we still communicate just fine. Nobody stops understanding us because we mixed up a verb form. Communication is about meaning, not perfection. So give yourself permission to be imperfect. Give yourself permission to sound like a learner, because guess what? You are a learner. That's okay. People are generally really patient and understanding when you're speaking their language. They appreciate the effort. They're not sitting there judging your grammar. Let's talk about accent for a minute, because this is something people worry about a lot. They want to sound like a native speaker, and they think having an accent means they're doing something. Wrong, but that's not true at all. An accent is just evidence that you speak more than one language, which is actually really cool. Now, if you want to work on your pronunciation, that's great. Clear pronunciation helps people understand you better, but you don't need to sound exactly like someone from California or London or wherever. You just need to be clear and understandable. And honestly, the world is full of different English accents. British English, American English, Australian English, Indian English, Nigerian English. They all sound different and they're all valid. What matters more than accent is things like word stress and sentence rhythm. English is a stress-timed language, which means we stress certain syllables and certain words, and we kind of rush through the others. That rhythm is what makes English sound like English. If you get that rhythm right, people will understand you even if your individual sounds aren't perfect. Listen to how native speakers stress words in a sentence. Usually we stress the content words, the nouns and verbs and adjectives, the words that carry the main meaning. And we de-stress the function words, the little words like the and of and to. So a sentence like I went to the store sounds more like I went to the store. That rhythm is important. You can practice this with that shadowing exercise I mentioned earlier. When you're repeating what you hear, really focus on matching the rhythm and the stress patterns. Where does the speaker's voice go up? Where does it go down? Which words are louder? Which syllables in each word are stressed? This is the music of English, and when you get it right, you sound way more natural. Okay, so we've talked about listening and speaking, but what about reading and writing? Well, reading is huge for building your vocabulary and getting a feel for how English works. But you have to read a lot. I'm talking thousands and thousands of pages. And again, it should be interesting to you. Don't force yourself through boring textbooks. Read things you'd read in your own language. If you like mystery novels, read mystery novels in English. If you like articles about science or fashion or sports, read those. Start with easier stuff if you need to. There are graded readers specifically designed for language learners. No shame in that. As you get more comfortable, move up to more challenging material. And when you read, don't stop to look up every word you don't know. This is really important. If you stop constantly, you'll lose the flow of what you're reading and it'll feel like a chore. Just keep reading. If you can understand the general meaning, that's enough. Your brain will start to figure out what those unknown words mean through context. You'll see the same word in different situations, and gradually its meaning becomes clear. That said, if there's a word that keeps coming up and you really can't figure it out, sure, look it up. But don't break your reading flow for every little thing. The goal is to read enough that you're building up this huge warehouse of language in your brain, all these examples of how words and phrases and sentences work together. Writing is similar. You want to write a lot, but you want it to be meaningful. Journaling is great for this. Write about your day, your thoughts, your opinions on things. It doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, it's better if you just write freely without stopping to check every sentence. Let the ideas flow. You can always go back and edit later. Or find people to write to. Language exchange partners, online forums about your interests, comments on blogs or videos you like. When you're writing for a real audience, even if it's just one person, it changes the dynamic. You're communicating, not just completing an exercise. That makes your brain engage differently, take it more seriously. And here's a tip for both reading and writing. Notice how things are phrased. When you read something that sounds really natural and good, pay attention to how the writer constructed it. What words did they choose? How did they connect ideas? You're not copying, you're learning patterns. Then when you write, you can try using similar structures. This is something writers do all the time, by the way. We read a lot to improve our writing. We're always noticing what works, what sounds good, what feels smooth. You can do the same thing as a language learner. You're training your ear for what good English sounds like. Now, I want to talk about something that doesn't get discussed enough: the emotional side of learning a language. Because it's hard, right? It's frustrating. There are days when you feel like you're not making progress. Days when you can't understand what someone's saying and you feel stupid. Days when the words just won't come out of your mouth the way you want them to. That's all. Normal, everyone goes through it. Language learning isn't a straight line. It's more like a spiral. You'll feel like you're getting better, then suddenly it feels like you've gotten worse. But you haven't. Your brain is just reorganizing information, making room for new stuff. Those plateaus and dips are part of the process. Be patient with yourself. Learning a language is a huge undertaking. You're literally rewiring your brain. That takes time. It takes thousands of hours of exposure and practice. There's no shortcut. Anyone who tells you they're lying to you. But here's the good news. Every hour you put in counts. Every bit of listening, every conversation, every page you read. It's all building up, even when you can't see it. And celebrate the small wins. Did you understand a joke in English today? That's huge. Did you have a whole conversation without pausing to think about grammar? Amazing. Did you read an article and only had to look up a few words? That's progress. Notice these things. Give yourself credit. It's easy to focus on how far you still have to go and forget how far you've already come. One more thing about the emotional side. It's okay to take breaks. If you're feeling burned out, step back for a few days. Language learning should be enjoyable or at least satisfying. If it's making you miserable, something needs to change. Maybe you need to find more interesting materials. Maybe you need to adjust your expectations. Maybe you just need a breather. The people who succeed at learning languages aren't necessarily the smartest or the most talented. They're the ones who keep going. They're consistent. They make it part of their life, not something they do intensely for a month and then quit. Think of it like exercise. You don't go to the gym for 8 hours one day and expect to be fit. You go regularly, consistently, and gradually you get stronger. Same with language. A little bit every day is better than a lot once in a while. Even 15 or 20 minutes a day, if you do it every single day, adds up to something significant over time. Find a routine that works for you and stick with it. Make English a habit. Let me share one more story with you. I had a friend who moved to Japan without speaking any Japanese. She was terrified. She didn't know how she was going to survive, but she had no choice. She was there for work, so she just threw herself into it. She watched Japanese TV, even though she barely understood anything. She tried to talk to her neighbors, using gestures and simple words. She made mistakes constantly, said embarrassing things, got confused all the time. But you know what? After a year, she was conversational. Not fluent, but she could handle daily life, have basic conversations, express herself. And she said the turning point was when she stopped trying to learn Japanese and just started trying to live in Japanese. She stopped thinking of it as study time and started thinking of it as life. That's what I want for you with English. I want you to live in it, not just study it. Surround yourself with it. Make it part of your daily experience. Listen to English while you're commuting. Watch shows in English while you're eating. Think in English while you're falling asleep. Let it seep into your life until it doesn't feel foreign anymore. And use technology to your advantage. We live in an incredible time for language learners. You have access to unlimited content in English. Podcasts, YouTube videos, Netflix shows, ebooks, news articles, social media. You can connect with English speakers all over the world without leaving your house. Use these tools. They're right there waiting for you. Create an English environment for yourself. Change your phone settings to English. Follow English-speaking accounts on social media. Join online communities where people discuss things you care about in English. The more you surround yourself with the language, the faster you'll improve. You're basically tricking your brain into thinking you live in an English-speaking country. And hey, if you can actually go to an English-speaking country, even better. Immersion is the fastest way to improve, but I know that's not possible for everyone. The good news is you can create your own immersion at home. It won't be quite as intense, but it can still be really effective if you're intentional about it. One thing I haven't talked much about yet is grammar study. And you might be wondering, should you study grammar at all? Here's my take. A little bit of grammar study can be helpful, especially for understanding patterns and clearing up confusion. But it should be a small part of your learning, not the main thing. Think of grammar as the map, not the territory. The map can help you understand where you are and where you're going, but you don't learn to navigate by staring at a map. You learn by actually walking around. Same with language. You don't learn to speak by memorizing rules. You learn by speaking and sometimes checking the map to understand why something works the way it does. So if you want to spend maybe 10 or 15% of your study time on grammar, fine. Look things up when you're confused. Read explanations of patterns you keep seeing, but don't let it dominate your learning. The other 85% should be input and practice. Listening, reading, speaking, writing. Actual use of the language. And when you do study grammar, make it practical. Don't just memorize rules. See how they work in real sentences. Find examples in things you're reading or listening to. Try using the structure in your own speaking or writing. Connect it to actual communication, not just abstract rules. You know what's interesting? Kids learn grammar without studying it at all. They just absorb it through hearing correct examples over and over. And their grammar is pretty good, usually better than adults who have studied all the rules but haven't had enough practice. That should tell you something about what really matters. Okay, I want to give you some really practical tips you can start using today. Specific things you can do to improve your English through natural conversation and exposure. First, find a podcast you like and commit to listening to it regularly. It could be this podcast or any other one that interests you. Listen to each episode at least twice. First time, just listen for general understanding. Don't stress about every word. Second time, you can pay more attention to details, maybe write down phrases that sound useful. Second, start a voice journal. Use the voice memo app on your phone and just talk about your day for 5 minutes. Don't script it, don't prepare, just talk. It'll feel awkward at first, but it gets easier. And you can listen back to yourself and notice where you struggle, what kinds of mistakes you make. Third, find someone to practice with. A language exchange partner, a tutor, a friend who speaks English, whoever. Have a regular conversation time, even if it's just 15 minutes once a week. Regular practice with a real person is gold. Fourth, watch a TV show in English with subtitles in English, not your language. This is important. English subtitles help you connect the sounds you're hearing with the written words. It builds that relationship in your brain. And pick a show you actually want to watch, something that's entertaining. Fifth, read for at least 15 minutes a day. Anything. News articles, blog posts, short stories, novels, whatever. Just read in English every single day. Make it as automatic as brushing your teeth. Sixth, practice shadowing for 5 or 10 minutes a day. Pick a short audio clip, could be from a podcast or a YouTube video, and repeat after the speaker, matching their rhythm and intonation as closely as possible. Seventh, learn one new phrase or expression every day. Not just a vocabulary word, but a whole chunk of language that you can use. Write it down, practice saying it, try to use it in conversation or writing that day. Eighth, think in English. Start narrating your life in your head in English. This is free practice you can do anytime, anywhere. Waiting in line, think about what you're seeing in English. Cooking dinner, describe what you're doing in English in your head. Those 8 things, if you do them consistently, will transform your English. You don't have to do all of them every day. Pick the ones that fit your life and your schedule, but be consistent. That's the key. And remember, you're not trying to be perfect. You're trying to communicate. You're trying to express yourself, share ideas, connect with people. That's what language is for. It's not a test you have to pass. It's a tool you use to interact with the world. So stop putting so much pressure on yourself. Stop thinking you have to sound like a native speaker before you can really participate in conversations. You can participate now. Today, right where you are. Your English is good enough to communicate. It'll get better as you use it, but it's already good enough to start. I think sometimes we forget that the goal isn't perfection, it's communication. Native speakers don't speak perfectly. We mumble, we use slang, we make grammatical errors, we forget words. Language is messy and human and imperfect. That's what makes it beautiful. Don't aim for some impossible standard. Aim for being understood and being able to understand others. And enjoy the process. Learning a language opens up a whole new world. You get to read books and watch movies and have conversations you couldn't have before. You get to understand different perspectives, different cultures. It's amazing when you think about it. Every new word you learn is a key to something you couldn't access before. So yes, it's hard. Yes, it takes time, but it's also an adventure. It's you expanding what you're capable of, pushing your brain to do something new and challenging. That's pretty cool. Give yourself credit for that. As we wrap up here, I just want to say, you can do this. I've seen so many people improve their English, people who thought they never would. People who were convinced they were bad at languages. And they did it by changing their approach, by focusing on natural exposure and practice instead of grammar drills and vocabulary lists. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need to live in an English-speaking country. You don't need expensive courses or private tutors. You just need exposure, practice, and consistency, and the willingness to make mistakes and learn from them. Start today, not tomorrow, not next week, today. Pick one thing from what we talked about and do it. Listen to a podcast, watch a video, read an article. Practice shadowing for 5 minutes. Whatever it is, just start, and then do it again tomorrow. And the next day, build that habit. Your future self will thank you. 6 months from now, a year from now, you're going to look back and be amazed at how much you've improved. But only if you start now and keep going. So go, dive in, immerse yourself, make English part of your life. You've got this.